At what point does M.A.D. become your primary source of income, like how you make a living?
I think it was very quick. Um, I think a year after the first proper tour with DI, it switched because we had just 24-hour job. People calling us 24 hours for everything. It was very successful, the idea we had to work a network. But at that point, we didn't thought about there was not so many people to feed the network. But now we had a club system built who was ready for the network too. And they needed shows to continue because everything was about continue, right? So that was a little bit the problem because people who went with us back in the days, they faded a little bit out because the new wave of like Black Flag, government issue, they could deal with. But the next wave who came, Verbal Assault, Agnostic Front, DI, they're not their type of music anymore because they went with Fugazi and No Means No, and they wanted to be a little bit more, they started to divide the scene in boxes and genres. And so they were not with us at that point anymore. And that means we got so many calls, so many people asking us for help and do something. We had to do full-time job, and there was no time anymore.
So how did you, because you'd mentioned earlier, like kind of like so many bands, let's say Discharge, for example, it's like you kind of hit a point where it has to kind of become your full-time job. But a lot of those bands, and we'll just use Discharge, they changed. And maybe they changed because maybe they wanted to do something that was more commercial, or maybe their tastes just changed or whatever. But you have these bands that people loved and were just like, this is the band. And then they put up like the dreaded metal record or the dreaded new wave record.
SSD.
And people make this change. And that happened time and time and time again in the 80s. How did M.A.D., when you started doing it professionally, like making your money, stay true to its roots and stay like punk, hardcore, like with the ethical side?
Well, first of all, if these bands changing so drastically, they also changed the network, and they've been out. So there was not even any room for us anymore because we've been for them then more like something they had to get out of instead like continue. What was a big mistake for them because we built it up at that time as so great network, they could maybe survive even with a change because the tolerance on that side was very big. Concerned to like the other side, the commercial side, where you have to give the people what they want and not what you like to play. Destroyed them all. I mean, there was not the first bands. Yes, Billy Idol went big and Clash went big, but everybody else, if you look at it, there's not a big list of it. Discharge either. I mean, they fall completely down when they did the metal one and they changed the voice. Same with all the Americans, Black Flag, who cared on the end what they did there, you know what I mean? Or SSD, a legend, when they brought out this How We Rock, everybody was like, what is this? You know what I mean? Then SSD was not the legend anymore.
I gotta tell you something. I gotta admit something to you. I love How We Rock. Shout out Al. I love How We Rock. It's a great record.
But you know what? Same here. I listened to it and I liked it. See, because at that point, I understood already that my ideas from the past, because I hated really Clash when they brought out London Calling, right? Because I thought like, it has to be us. So I thought still that the band, I own the band.
Yeah.
But yes. I understood very quick at the time in the 79, 80s, whatever, I understood it's not the way. The band can do what they want. And so more, they do what they want. So better it is for us, and that's not the point what people saw at the time.
Yeah. So how did you stay true to what you were about as you became financially dependent? And I'm just going to give you an example. Of course, I know you know Bridge 9 Records. Chris Wren said to me once when I was younger, he never drew his income from Bridge 9 Records. He always drew it from his t-shirt company, Sully's. I said, how come you don't live off of Bridge 9? He said, the day I start living off Bridge 9 is the day I have to start making choices based on what will sell rather than what I like. He's like, so I'd rather draw my money from somewhere else. You're in this interesting place because like you started doing a thing that was based on what you like, but also you're bringing these bands over and they have to do well financially. So it's like that kind of weird balance of it's what we like, but it also has to do well. So how did you stay true to your roots while also doing good business?
We are not business people.
Tell me more.
When we started M.A.D. and we started to be successful and everybody thought, oh, the big company, the rich guys, we did in the night mostly jobs. I did a lot of years. And the same time when we did in the daytime the booking, I do in the nighttime security on shows or whatever. We glued posters professional-wise. We had a company even, basically, with friends, gluing posters for everybody, for all the shows, theaters in Berlin in the nighttime. So in the nighttime we did it. So we are not good business people if you look at that point, because we never looked at our account. We just did it because we wanted to do it. And if we need money to live, we just did more work to make it happen. And if that doesn't bring us the money, we did some other jobs to make the money to do what we want to do. And at one point, we figured we had money made. We don't need to do the postering in the night anymore. We don't need to work on construction for like 2-3 weeks in between or whatever. We make enough money that the refrigerator is full and we can pay the bills. And we've been satisfied that way. So we continue to now to do what we actually want to do. That it went very successful and a lot of bands been loyal and continued with us and shared basically our ideas we still have to do what we want to do and don't care first about that money, that band doesn't bring me any money. You know, we think about this band until now can bring something for the scene. This is really still our thoughts. You know, we finding bands, we said we can do this. And we know that when we have a certain artist, a band, we have a certain message, certain music was a little bit different, something to say, and we can make this band going around in Europe. It will help the scene to bring more value, you know, and open the doors again for people, you know, to do more again, instead just copy themselves or feed the people what they want to hear, what basically hardcore these days for most people too. Bands don't doing anymore what they want to do, what they feel, you know, they do what basically people want to hear and what is successful. And that's why we have so many no-name bands always, or young bands we working up because there's no money to make. I mean, nobody would do this. You know what I mean? If it comes from that perspective. But the lucky side is we have so many true friends, you know, bands who basically just continue for years to make it possible that we still live the dream, you know, to change it.
Is it too far to say that you were basically the first organized independent booking agency for punk and hardcore, or were there ones before you?
I mean, there was definitely ones before somehow. But if you look at the fact right now of the history, I think we are the longest existing.
Okay, so you're the longest running one.
Yes.
And you were one of the first.
Yeah.
You're part of something that's kind of like first or second wave of people who are like, we're just doing it because we believe in this thing. And you've been the one that's lasted the longest.
Yeah. Because we are not business people.
Right.
Everybody else stopped because they found out they couldn't make any money. You know? And that's why the clubs changed, the promoters changed, the bands. If you look at it, you know, it's not about a certain part of history, bands stopping playing. It has mostly the cause behind it.
So at one point, though, people who weren't a part of that first or second generation, they start their own booking agencies and competition starts. How did you feel about that?
We never saw it as competition because back in the days when we did it, we've been all friends. I mean, when I said before, we drove to San Francisco to hang up with like, you know, I guess from Maximum Rock and Roll and Change Only. Usually it's like us and 3 or 4 different bookers. These days you would see as competition, but we've been all friends. You know, we working, I mean, if you put it down, we can't feed this big market anymore. It's impossible. It's impossible for 1, 3, or 2 agents to feed this independent market and help all the bands. That would be completely out of control. You know, so the competition is there these days, and it's probably very bad and probably the worst ever. But in reality, if you take a deep breath, there's enough room for everybody. There's enough who could help. But mostly, if you look really deep into this, you see very quickly by the bands, most of the agents, they want only the fame, the big income. They don't care about groundwork or whatever. You know, the people who could do groundwork normally suffer so much that they stop after a certain point. You know, but in general, there's enough room. I mean, there's enough labels to release a record. And if they can't, you do it yourself these days even. No problem. You know, there's so many venues. one band can't feed that. You need all these bands to keep this whole alternative network we call hardcore, punk rock, whatever, alive. And you need more people. So I don't see there's competition. The only thing is like, if they start to jump into your business and try to convince bands to change, move over, because on the other side is the greener. You know what I mean? This is, but that was not back in the days. This is now. Because now, these days, there's missing the attitude. There's missing the spirit. Now it's like a commercial business. Because some people don't walk on the edge, they're on one side.
So from when you started to now, like, it's definitely become like a thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So much so that M.A.D, despite you saying we're not good business people, you're a real business.
Yes, we are.
How many people work at M.A.D?
Right now, it's 7 probably.
Okay, so you've got seven full-time people.
Yeah. It's like 6 booker and 1 in the office now. But it changed. We had before 3 people more working in the office. But also there, it's like a coming and going a little bit the last years. And with a new network system, we built it all a little bit different, especially after the pandemic.
So, and at some point, you end up, you have kids and you have a family.
Yeah.
At what point did you have no other jobs, only M.A.D? How old were you when that happened?
1990.
1990.
But well, I had the night job. So without this security things and night, probably be till end of the 90s.
End of the 90s.
70s, yeah. That's when we stopped basically doing like jobs beside.